Hi everyone. Thank you for coming to the 10 Steps to Financial Success workshop today. My name is Derek Chow. I'm a second year math econ major and I'm the finance director for ASC this year. Today, I'm joined with my amazing committee who will be introducing themselves shortly, as well as some incredible people from Wescom and official partner of the UCLA Alumni Association, who you'll also be hearing from in a little bit. Attending this workshop today means you're taking a good and necessary step to having a greater understanding of financial literacy that will help you succeed in not only college, but also for the rest of your life. So without further ado, I'll just let my coordinators introduce themselves, and then we'll meet all of the Wescom representatives who have joined us today to present their 10 steps to financial success.
Hi everyone, my name is Shannon. I'm a first year biz econ major and I'm a coordinator for the finance committee.
Hi everyone, I'm Sonia. I'm also first year biz econ major and I'm another coordinator for the committee.
Hi, I'm Keegan. I'm a first year applied mathematics major and I'm a member of the finance committee. Today we have with us Sal Murguia, a partner and development representative at Wescom Credit Union, and Carl Gerstenacker, a UCLA financial advisor with Wescom Financial Services. We're in good hands, and so I'll let them take it from here.
Thank you, Keegan and UCLA Alumni Scholars. Appreciate you having us here tonight. It's our pleasure. I just want to say hello to everyone who is listening in and tuning in. My name is Sal Murguia. I'm a partner development representative with Wescom Credit Union. I've been with Wescom for about 3 years, and I've been in the credit union industry for over 10 years, and I've been conducting financial literacy presentations for about the same amount of time. And just wanted to say that this is a little bit unusual for us. We're used to conducting these types of presentations in person, but we're glad to be able to do this for you on a virtual basis. And I love seeing all the participants here and learning about this. So just to set a couple of ground rules, if we happen to stumble throughout this presentation, we apologize in advance, just simply because of what we're doing. And you know, we might run into technical difficulties. There might be some communication snags. We're just trying to prepare you for just what might happen, right? So if I cut out or things like that, just be patient. That's all I'm just asking for. If there seems to be any sort of technical aspects of it, just be patient with us and we'll see it through to this, through the presentation. As Keegan mentioned, Carl Gerstenacker is our UCLA financial advisor from Wescom Financial Services. He's going to be joining me on some of these topics that we're going to be discussing today. And also joining me is David Bochter from Wescom Credit Union. He's a colleague of mine in the Partner Development Department. He's going to be monitoring the chat. So we're encouraging all of you to have, if you have questions, to participate through the chat and ask questions. And hopefully if we get enough participation at the end of the presentation, we'll reward a lucky participant at random with a cool prize. So hopefully you all stick around with us till the end and we'll reward that one lucky individual. So with that being said, after setting the table, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to get started on the presentation. So again, I just want to communicate to David and to Carl, I cannot see any faces. I'm just going to be staring at my presentation. So David, just let me know and feel free to interject whenever there's any questions that come in, and we'll be happy to answer them. So for all those tuning in, this is the 10 Steps to Financial Success presented by Wescom Credit Union. And we're just going to go over some fairly basic concepts in financial literacy. I know a number of you who are tuning in are very smart and very capable individuals. And some of the information that we're going to share might be a little rudimentary and basic, but when you're talking about finances and financial literacy, it's always important to go over the basics and reinforce the basics as we move through to more complex topics, okay? So again, feel free to ask any questions. feel free to participate. And we're just going to knock this out. We're just going to get through the 10 steps, and we'll try to make this as entertaining as possible. But the first thing I wanted to share with all of you is defining financial success, or financial success, what it equals. And basically, financial success is being in control of your money, right? Your income's doesn't determine how successful you are. Your choices and priorities do. So the theme that we're going to be running throughout this presentation tonight is just basically becoming a person who is responsible with their money, a money manager. And because there's people that will tell you throughout your life that you want to make a lot of money, make a lot of money, make a lot of money. And that, that's good that you want to make a lot of money. And then with making money, you're spending money. You're spending money. Whenever you make money, you're spending money. But then you'll have those people that will say, you got to save money, save money, right? But what we're trying to encourage people to do is this: make some money, spend some money, save some money, become a good money manager. You want to be a responsible money manager. And these are the building blocks and the steps that will allow you to become a responsible money manager. So let's move forward into step one. Step one seems really easy. Common sense. Establish goals. Identify needs and wants. You want to be specific. When will you reach this goal? How much will you need it? And you also got to be realistic. Can it be done with current or proposed resources and expenses? Meaning this: too many people, whenever it comes to responsible money management, usually skip this step. Or when they learn this step, they forget about this step, right? And it's always important to determine between your wants versus your needs, okay? You need clothing, you need food, you need shelter, right? You need those types of basics in your life. You need transportation. However, a lot of people start focusing on the wants instead of the needs. You want a BMW, even though you don't necessarily need it. You want the latest Air Jordans, even though you might not need that expensive amount of shoes. So there's people inherently put pressure on themselves to perhaps outspend what they can afford, right? So what we want to teach and reinforce with everyone is establish certain goals. Say, for example, with my son, who's 13 years old, he wants the latest and greatest Xbox, right? He can't afford it now, but we've been teaching him that if you have a good plan put together, you might not get that Xbox today, but if you have a good savings plan and you're consistent and you're dedicated to it, you might get it in 3 months, 4 months. Work at it, be resourceful with what you got, right? He's a young 13-year-old. He doesn't have a lot that's coming in, okay? But he's also not spending a lot either. And see, no matter how rich somebody gets or how successful they become financially, if they don't have this first step in discipline, they're just going to crash and burn just like anybody else who does not have money, or they're going to struggle just as much as someone who does not have money. So again, money doesn't necessarily mean success. It doesn't necessarily mean happiness. We want you to be a good money manager to where you're focused and disciplined on focusing on your needs first, getting what you want later, and be realistic with establishing goals and accomplishing those goals. Step two, take stock. Determine where you stand allows you to establish a starting point. What you own minus what you owe is your net worth, right? So this is what we're always talking about. We're talking about building blocks. We're talking about the basics. Look at your current financial situation. Most of you are students right now, right? So you might not bring in a whole lot right now at this point, okay? So you should live within those means on what you're bringing in, okay? Some of you right now might not be owing so much at this point, but you will be. For those of you who might have student loans, you're going to be owing a lot in the future. So you're going to have to be figuring that out. And when you go out and get a job, you're going to have your gross income that you make, but your net income with the money that you get to keep, right? And you're going to have to take stock in that net income, understanding everything that you own, everything that you owe, and determine what your net worth is. And you're building a building block. You're basically building a blueprint of yourself in the financial world. So take stock and be honest with where you're at, where you want to go, and where you're at, where you're going, and where you want to be moving forward. Step 3. We're cruising along through these steps. Create a spending and savings plan, right? This is just a fancy way of doing what most people dread in their lives, and that is creating a budget. But this is an exercise in discipline, right? When you create a spending and savings plan. And there's a reason why people don't like creating budgets. It's because you're basically taking all of your habits, good and bad, you're putting it down on paper, essentially. So you have to look in the mirror and be honest with yourself. A lot of financial literacy, a lot of financial management is just about, it's just the struggle of honesty with the self, if that makes sense, right? So you got to look at your income. You got to look at your expenses, what you're tracking. What are your budget busters? What are things that are blowing up your budget? Are you focusing way too much on your wants, right? Are you spending too much on eating out at restaurants? Are you spending too much on entertainment, vacations, and it's blowing up your budget? Are you spending too much on where you live or on your car, right? There's a lot of examples of people who go through life making these mistakes over and over and over again because they don't have the discipline to create a disciplined budget where they look at the income, track the expenses, create some savings, look at how they're going to pay their debt, and look at their bottom line. And again, this is like putting your habits down on paper. And sometimes the truth hurts and it's hard to look at, but you got to be realistic with yourself. Moving on. Step 4.
So let me interject real fast. We have a couple of questions that have come in already. And one of them is, what are some ways that you find money habits that you aren't conscientiously aware of? Maybe some things that are not traditional based on your experience. And I know Carl may have some answers to that as well.
Can you repeat that again? I'm not
sure.
completely understanding. Yeah.
What are some ways to find money habits that we aren't conscientiously aware of? I know you'll probably touch on this in a couple of your slides that are coming up, but as far as the wants and needs, maybe going to Starbucks on a regular basis, or going to the movies, things that we've kind of formed these habits that every Friday I'm going to go hang out with my cohort and go to the Coffee Bean or whatnot, just as an example. So I don't know if maybe from your experiences or Carl's, you guys have some stuff that you just may not be conscientiously aware of that can help out.
Yeah, I look at it like this. Usually a lot of young people come into the spending and money management world by having habits and income that they inherited from either a parent or role model, someone who helped them move along. So perhaps whether it's through a credit card that they didn't actually apply for, but they're using a credit card in somebody else's, like in a parent or a guardian's name, or they just build some bad habits because perhaps they're not responsible for the income at first, right? They're just worried about spending, right? So I think from that nature, it's just I guess the way that I tell people is, once you take self-accountability and become more self-sufficient in your money management, then that's where you need to get to in order to move forward with a strong, honest budget. If hopefully I'm answering the question in which I'm asking, because things just pop up here and there. Usually has to do with overspending or abusing credit because that individual might not have been responsible for either the income coming in or paying off the debt that's being created. So it's just kind of like a loose relationship with their own personal money management. So I just think it's important that at an early start, you have personal accountability and you become financially independent to where it's you and only you who's responsible for what you're tracking and what you're managing.
I'll add a little bit too, if that's okay, Sal.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, guys. So, hi everybody. By the way, I'm Carl. I'm the financial advisor that actually covers the UCLA branch. But one thing that I talk to a lot of our members about, or just folks that I talk about financial planning with, we try to simplify these things for you guys. So, in terms of saving and spending, what I found to be effective is automating your saving. So, you know, if it's up to us, and I think Sal will probably jump into this a little bit more down the road in the presentation, but when you automate your saving, it's much more effective, and it's really just a psychological thing, right? It's much more fun to spend money. It just is. So one effective way to ensure that you are saving or investing, let's say, is to make it a systematic thing every month, for example, where you schedule something where every month on the 1st, you're setting aside a certain amount of money that you're putting away into savings, into investments, whatever it is, on a consistent basis, in this case, a monthly basis, for example. Once you set something like that up, you can always tweak it, right? As you guys start to develop higher incomes over your careers, you can change that and make your savings a larger amount as time goes on. So that's one effective way to consider is automating your saving. And as Sal will get into with budget controlling that debt, right? Your consumer debt, credit cards, things like that. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, thanks for that, Carl. Yeah, so we're going to move forward, and hopefully we're going to be reinforcing a lot of these themes as we move throughout the presentation. So for example, step 4, you know, we're going from step 3 to creating that budget to step 4, how you're going to create that budget. And when you come to certain realizations of being responsible with your money, step 4 is just telling you to live within your means, right? When you're establishing your goal, you have your budget set, you might not be satisfied with where you're at. So the good news when you're ever doing money management and financial management is that it's never stagnant. It's always fluid. And you have an opportunity to make it fluid, right? You're not satisfied with where you're at, you know, you can increase your income, right? Or, you know, if at this point in time in your life, you can increase your income dramatically, prioritize spending, right? Reduce in certain areas, substitute out, like perhaps, you know, I do this all the time. When I'm a conscientious shopper, right? For example, just buying soap for washing clothes. It's like, oh, Tide costs, you know, $15, but Sun costs $9. You know, is there a big difference? I'm not sure. But if Tide is one of the products that's breaking my budget, you know, stick to Sun and substitute it out. And just, you know, when you can get back to affording Tide, use Tide. I know that sounds pretty simple, but that's just a lot of people just have this own psychological attachment to certain brands and certain things where sometimes you're just going to have to let go and substitute. And, you know, I always use the car because a lot of people equate your car with a certain status. And usually it's like, all right, well, heck, I can't drive a Mercedes Benz, but you know what, this, this Audi, or Audis are pretty expensive too. This Toyota is does the job. It gets me from point A to point B. It's not as expensive. You got to think about, you know, the maintenance on the car and the insurance on the car is not as expensive. And this is what I can afford at this time, right? So when you postpone, you're like, okay, all right, you know, maybe I can't get that Mercedes now, but I'll postpone and get it later, right? Or forego altogether. You're just priorities changing. Like, I don't need to do this at all, right? Especially when it comes to like focusing on your wants, right? I need to take a vacation to, or I want to take a vacation to Hawaii. Well, if Hawaii is just super expensive, you just can't do it, just forego it. You know, maybe plan for it later, but maybe going to Cozumel, Mexico, which is, you know, like it's awesome to go and visit anyways. Maybe it's a good substitute for it. So there's just a lot of things that you can do. Live within your means, you know, and just be honest with yourself. A lot of people get themselves into trouble when they start lying to themselves and they start living outside of their means. And I say that, again, let me repeat that. No matter how successful you are, there's plenty of examples of individuals, very famous, have a lot of notoriety, that seem like they make a lot of money. A lot of people think they make a lot of money and they're good. They're a good financial position, but then you hear years later, they owe a lot in taxes. They're all in debt. They owe more than what they had. Their net worth is worth negative. So it's like, you know, my net worth is a lot more than, say, a person who is famous and supposedly rich. It happens all the time. You hear about it all the time, whether it was, you know, Nicolas Cage, whether it was Wesley Snipes, you know, there's so many examples. You just run down the line. And you just don't want to find yourself in that position. So live within your means, right? There's suggested budget guidelines when you go along with this. And I know living in Southern California, this could fluctuate. You know, like I said, all this information is fluid, right? But it's good that you break these things down, right? Perhaps 35% of your income goes towards housing, you know, 15% goes towards paying off your debt, 15% towards transportation, 35% towards savings. So that they or 10% towards savings. Sorry, I misread that. And then 25% to other. So this could always fluctuate back and forth, right? Say, for example, where I went to college, where I lived, is rather expensive. And a 3-bedroom apartment was, you know, if I lived there on my own, I couldn't afford it. Or if I lived in my own room on my own, I couldn't afford it. So where I went to school, we had 6 people in a 3-bedroom apartment, everyone all splitting a room in order to cut the cost in half down for everyone who was living there. And then you get out in the real world, maybe that's something that you're going to have to do. Maybe a goal of yours is to live on your own in an apartment in Southern California, but that might not be feasible. You might need a roommate, right? You might need someone else to partner with in order to make things happen. So it's important that you establish that budget, you establish the guidelines, and you start communicating with people that you trust to help you with obtaining your goals.
So one of the questions along the budgeting guidelines that came in earlier is the 50-30-20 rule. Could that be an effective way to plan and develop good financial habits for a college student? Carl jumped in and answered online. Thanks, Carl. I'll let you elaborate on your answer, but along the same lines, these are just guidelines. So Carl, I'll let you speak to the 50-30-20 rule.
Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, no problem, guys. The idea of the 50-30-20 rules is, like David said, it's good guidelines, right? The whole idea of how much to put away for your needs or for your wants and how much to put away for savings. You guys will come to find as you start to develop income, right? And you have the ability to put some money away and save. A good general rule, and again, this is general for most folks. I always tell folks it's a good idea to put away typically about 6 months worth of expenses for an emergency, for a rainy day, right? That's I know, like Sal was talking about, as a student, that's I mean, you're in a different state right now, right? But as when you guys graduate and you start to develop your careers and bring income in and you're able to save, that's a good rule of thumb to begin with. 6 months worth of monthly expenses just kind of sitting in a savings account for a rainy day. And then after that, you start to save or invest depending on what your personal goals are going to be, right? Whether it's to buy a house, to buy a car, for retirement way down the road. And then you start to control your expenses as well. That's going to be a crucial part of being financially successful down the road, is also controlling the expenses. Kind of like running a business, right? You need positive cash flow coming in every month. You don't want to like Sal was saying, you don't want to have a high income and then that income is just going out in expenses every month. You want to turn that income into a larger nest egg for you guys for down the road. That way your money's put to work versus just going out in consumer expenses, right? So I saw Brianna's question come in, and yeah, I mean, it's a good general rule for you guys as college students to try to get into the groove of good financial habits. Again, that's totally flexible, right? It doesn't have to be exactly the 50, 30, 20 percentages, but it's a good I guess a good way to go if you guys want to kind of have some sort of guidelines to do it.
Thanks, Carl.
Thanks, Carl.
And then Casey, I see your question on how do we balance wants and needs. I'm going to let Sal go into step 5 and may answer that question, but then I'll chime in at the end of that. So Sal, just so that way you know where we're headed, is how do we balance our wants and our needs? So I'll let you go into step 5 and probably address that question.
Sure, no problem. Step 5 goes into a simple concept, and Carl was alluding to it, and we kind of touched on this already. It's paying yourself first, right? Paying yourself first is essentially just saying, open up a savings account and start saving your money, because saving enables you to reach your goals, right? And we're saying, save at least 10% of your income, whether it's from a job, whether it's from, who knows, financial aid, a scholarship, parents, guardian, wherever it comes from. Save some of it, 10% of it, right? And weigh those instant gratifications against ultimate gratification. Now we're talking about wants versus needs. How do you determine that? Well, the only way that I can tell you is that you're going to have to make that type of determination on your own. Okay, how important is it to you? And I know it's hard because from an early age, we are always inundated by messages, whether it's on TV, through TV advertising, radio advertising, internet advertising. We are inundated with messages that make you want so many different things. And a lot of people think that oh, forget about it. It's not that effective. Well, believe me, there's a lot of smart people and there's a reason why in the ad industry, people spend billions of dollars to try to influence you. So you're starting from a very early age to fighting against a lot of these impulses, right? And I've been teaching my kids. I have a daughter who's 8, a son who's 13. And from the time that they were born and were capable of communicating, I've been fighting the wants versus needs battle. Like just going down the grocery store line with my daughter when she was 5 was just a taxing exercise and wants versus needs. It still happens. Dad, I want that LOL doll. I want that LOL doll. And I look at her and I'm like, yeah, you want that LOL doll, but do you need it? And then she'll stare at me and looking at me like I just blew her mind away. And then she'll just look at me and say, like, yeah, I need that LOL doll. And then she's like, she tricked me. She got me. But that's what it comes down to. You have to weigh those gratifications. And what's important, again, we all need certain things. We all need food, shelter, clothing, to a certain extent, transportation. There's a lot of things that we need to weigh against each other. But you have to focus on your wants, or you have to focus on those needs before you get to your wants. You got to be disciplined in that area, right? And when we're talking about savings accounts, we encourage you to create diversity within your accounts, right? So you're looking at short-term accounts, or short-term goals, mid-term goals, long-term goals, and the different types of accounts that help you accomplish those goals. And Carl alluded to this already. You know, you want a liquid account, a savings account. That's for emergencies, right? Paying off your debt. Liquid just means you can tap into it and use it whenever you want. And that's usually a basic savings account. A medium-term account is like a semi-liquid, right? A certificate of deposit is a medium-term account, which is semi-liquid, meaning you can put your money there and it's going to pay you back in a yield, but you might not be able to access it for maybe 2 to 5 years, right? So you got to hold on to that, but that money will grow on its own through a yield, and you might be ready to tap into it. A lot of people use certificate of deposits, these midterm accounts, to save up for vacation, to save up for Christmas, to save up for a car, things like that. So if you want a nice car, a good idea is get some money, put it into a CD, a semi-liquid account, let it sit there for 2 to 5 years. When it comes back, you got more money to put down for a down payment. You can afford the car that you wanted instead of settling on the car that you needed, right? Or trade in the car that you use for a need and get the car that you want. And then there's long-term goals. These are investment accounts, right? Retirement, IRAs, things to that nature. Sometimes a 529 account for education is considered a long-term account. It's an investment account. You can't tap into it until after a certain amount of time, but it's usually 5+ years before you can even access that account, right? And then I'm going to lean on Carl on this, because when you're paying yourself, you're going to have different types of accounts that are tax deferred versus tax investment, but you can see over time how your money grows over time, whether it's a tax account or a tax deferred account. Carl, would you like to chime in on this one?
Sure. Sounds good, Sal.
Yeah.
I saw some, David, you're probably going to look at some of these questions here, but I'll let you kind of bring them up once we get there. But I'll talk about this slide here for a sec, guys. So the idea of tax deferred investment accounts versus taxed investment accounts. Basically, I'll simplify this. A tax investment account is basically an account where you hold investments, and any sort of dividends or capital gains that you earn in that year for that particular investment account, you will pay taxes on in that year. A tax deferred account basically means that any gains, any dividends that you're making inside of that particular account will not be taxed in the year that you earn them. And you won't pay any taxes on any gains as long as the money remains in that particular tax deferred account. Most notably, you guys have heard of 401ks. I think Brianna put another question here for Roth IRAs. So these type of accounts have certain benefits in there, where as long as the money remains inside of that type of account, you don't have to worry about taxes, right? Now, when you worry about taxes is at different points. We can kind of get into that. A good example is, I'm sure you guys have heard of traditional IRAs. Those are retirement accounts where they're tax deferred. So any gains that you're making, you don't worry about taxes while the money remains in there. Down the road, when you guys are retired and you're pulling money out, that's when that money gets added to your income for tax purposes. That's when we pay for taxes. So that's an example of a tax deferred account. The benefit you guys can see here on this chart is that with a tax deferred account, those taxes that we would otherwise pay in a tax account doesn't occur, right? So we don't have to worry about taxes. And so the growth in those over time is more powerful, right? Compound interest takes effect. And every year that we're earning interest or earning a return on our investments, that gets added on top of what you already made the year prior, right? So that's when you start, again, leaving your investments alone in an account over time, you start to really see the effect of compound interest.
Thanks, Carl. And when we're talking about, saving, paying yourself, it's never too early to start now. Like the picture says, don't wait until tomorrow. So quit procrastinating. Start now. Decide how much to put aside and have it auto-deducted, which Carl already mentioned. He mentioned compound interest only works over a period of time. So you're going to make more money over time with a certain type of savings account that you have, like an investment account. And your future is worth spending a little less today. You're a student right now. I'm not going to tell anybody how to live their life. But I know right now that a number of students, you're called a poor student for a reason. You're not making a lot of money at this point in time. So it's just important, and that's okay, because you're investing in your future. Your education is your investment, and you're investing for tomorrow. You still want to live a little today, just don't overdo it. You know, don't go out and just go, well, I don't have a lot of capital on me, meaning, you know, money that I can spend. So I'm just going to go and apply for a credit card and just start blowing that away, because that's usually the first prime mistake that will haunt you for a long, long, long time if you abuse your credit at a young age, because it'll just get you off on the wrong foot, send you down the wrong path. So what's important is that you create that savings plan first.
But while he waits to reconnect, we had a couple of investment questions. So let's pause for a moment, and I'll give Carl, if you're still online with me, an opportunity to address these. There's 3 of them, and I'll go through them one by one.
Sure.
The first one is, what is your opinion on passive investing? Should a percentage of your income go to that?
Good question, Jason. The simple answer is yes, right? Oh, did we lose Sal? I think we lost Sal. I'll answer some of these questions, guys, and hopefully Sal comes back on. But yeah, to answer that question, passive investing is one of the more effective ways to build your guys' wealth over time. A percentage of it should be going to that. When you guys transition into careers here and into the workforce, you'll notice that the most effective passive investment type of account that you'll encounter is a 401k, right? It's a good example of passive investing and having passive investment options within an account. To simplify it, right? With a 401k, for an example, you're just adding money to a particular investment account on a biweekly basis when you get paid. And what's happening there is that the money that you're putting away into this investment account is buying more shares of investments inside of that account. So not only are you adding or saving on a consistent basis, but you're actually buying shares of investments that will appreciate in value over time. And so that's where the effect of not only saving, but investing comes into play, because that money is receiving compound interest over time. So Jason, yeah, to answer your question, I think so. I think passive investing is definitely a good thing. But at the same time, you guys want to, as students, you want to ensure that, it makes sense if it's something that if you guys are looking to do now, right? Because again, income and cash flow is important to be able to do that. If that's not the case now, then maybe it's not the best idea. But once that income and that cash flow per month is there, then I think it is a good idea.
Thanks, Carl. And I know that we touched on this, but I want to make sure that we get everyone's questions answered. So the second one is, Brianna's asking, Social Security program benefits will be greatly cut by 2035. Would you suggest starting a savings for retirement now? She has a Roth IRA, a brokerage account, and a high yield.
Yeah. So I hope Social Security is still around by the time I retire. That would not be cool if it's not. But in terms of saving for retirement, yes, the earlier the better. To answer that question straightforward, the earlier the better for you guys. Again, time is on your side if you graduate from college and then you're able to land a job, and then you're able to contribute to a retirement account at 22, 23 years old. Time is 100% on your side, right? You're adding money for a longer period of time. You're adding money to investment accounts over a longer period of time, and compound interest just does its thing. And that nest egg starts to grow bigger. But again, it has to make sense, right? If you're in a position right now where you're able to save, if you guys are working, right, and you're able to set some money aside, and it doesn't necessarily negatively impact your monthly expenses, then yeah, I think you should. Brianna, if you want more specifics, we can maybe talk online and typically with investment advice, it's always important to kind of understand the specific situation, but with any of you guys, that applies to everybody. If you guys have any specific questions, we can maybe talk offline.
Yeah, and what I will do is at the end of the session, I will include Carl's email address as well as Sal's, if anybody has any questions to follow up with them. So thank you for that, Carl. And then I want to get to Dwight's question that he's asking, as a student, would it be smart to start saving for retirement in a retirement account, even if it's just a small amount? Or would it be smarter just to have as much as possible in an account that is more accessible and liquid to invest for retirement?
Yeah, Dwight, and that kind of goes along with what I was mentioning here a little bit ago. If income, right, if your guys' cash flow allows it, to put money away into either a retirement account or maybe a non-retirement account where you don't have to tie up your money till down the road. Yeah, I mean, it's a great idea to start sooner than later. But again, right now as students, you want to kind of start building these good habits to maybe pay off whatever debt you're accumulating per month, pay that off, and maybe save some money into maybe what we're talking about, a savings account or something that's liquid and available. But again, if income allows it and you guys have that cash flow now, then I think it's a good idea because you have a long time to invest and put the money away for down the road. But again, understanding that, hey, it's probably a good idea that I fund an emergency bucket first, right? Again, 6 months worth of expenses just kind of sitting in a bank account for a rainy day. And then anything above that, you put to work into investment accounts.
Thanks for that. I know that I dropped out for a second there, so I'm just making sure that we didn't get past step 6, right? We're still talking about harness power of time.
No, we were waiting for you, Sal. We're just addressing some questions that came through, so you can continue where we left off at step 6.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your patience as well. Appreciate it. Step 6. This is going to impact a number of students, obviously, who get student loans, but delete your debt. And like I mentioned before, try to live a cash-only lifestyle, right? And when you're reducing your debt, you have a couple strategies that you will be facing as you build debt. Everyone's going to create debt, whether it's through school, purchasing a car, buying a home, investing in a business. You're probably going to have some debt. Everyone deals and manages with credit and debt. So yeah, you want to try to live a cash-only lifestyle. That's important. That helps you, manage your debt levels. But you will probably get a credit card. You probably will get an auto loan. You'll probably get a mortgage loan. And so you want to do what you can to delete your debt. So number one, if you're going to take out a loan, you want to find the lowest interest as possible, right? So with that being said, you want to reduce your interest. So one strategy is looking at all of your accounts that you owe debt on and find the one that has the highest interest payment. And you start working on that one first. And you pay off the high interest loans first. And then you'll get to the second highest and then the third highest. And you start paying that off methodically, right? And once you pay off, you can start increasing your payments because you're taking into account the account that you've paid off and you're increasing the payment there. And you want to aggressively repay your most expensive debts. That's no doubt. But then at the same time, there's another way of eliminating your debt in a constructive, in a more systematic and strategic manner. And that's the snowball effect, where you find the account where you owe the least amount and you calculate what the minimum payment is on that, and then calculate how much you can afford to pay off past that minimum payment. And then you pay off the smallest amount, you pay off that account first. And then you compound the minimum payment to that, your monthly payment that you were just paying on that at that last account, and you go to the next account that has the lowest principal balance. And then you just keep putting that, you add that minimum payment into it. So you're paying off that minimum payment the minimum payment from the card or from the account you just eliminated, plus the amount that you can afford on a monthly basis. And it starts snowballing and you start paying off your debt faster. And that's really important to understand. Everyone needs to pay off their debt. You know, there's nothing worse and more stressful than owing money and feeling overwhelmed by debt. But if you have a good strategy going into it, you know, you talk to a financial advisor and you look at your debt honestly, you know, you'll be able to find a good strategy to start paying it off to where you're not killing yourself and feeling like you're living month to month on it. So there's okay debt versus bad debt. You know, no debt is like, great, let's have some good debt. But okay debt is debt that increases in value. A home loan, a business loan, your education, right? Those of you who have student loans, you're investing in yourself. You're your own business, right? So this debt is increasing in value over time. It's your student loan is basically saying your income power is going to increase over time because of your education, right? Bad debt is debt that decreases in value. You go into debt for buying clothes, meals, vacations. Sometimes it's with a car. The value of your car decreases by, I think, something like 10%. If it's a brand new car and as soon as you take it off the lot, the value just decreased by about 10%, right? So it's important that you understand what kind of debt you're getting yourself into, all right? So my advice to you when you're accruing debt is understanding what the terms and conditions are in that transaction that you're making or that deal that you're making, right? Because there's things that are called fixed rates versus variable rates. And a fixed rate is something that will be the same interest rate
Did we lose them?
life of the loan, and it won't change.
Oh.
But these loans to get into a different rate, a cheaper rate. All right, and bad debt decreases in value, like I said, and you're talking about interest rates, the variable rates. Those are rates that you got to look out for. The terms of.
Still there, Sal?
I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Now we can hear you.
All right. I don't know what's going on, but again,
you were talking about good debt, bad debt, good reception, bad reception. We're in all of it.
So I apologize, people. I want to talk about that. Just pay attention to what you're getting yourself involved in paying off that debt. The terms and conditions, okay? And that's just important for you to know and to understand. Step 7, buy a home. I know this might seem crazy to a number of you who are students, but it's never too early to start thinking about saving for buying a home because it might be the best investment that you'll ever make outside of your education. Because the advantages of buying a home is that your home increases in value typically over time. And you can, that's building equity. It increases in value. And you can get tax breaks for owning a home, essentially. And if you start saving now and you build a good credit score, it's going to allow you to get a better home down the line, right? I will preface this for everyone. Home ownership is not for everyone, and to only do it if you can afford it. But that's a great building block. I can't stress to you enough what buying a home not only means to you, not only to your self-worth maybe or your self-esteem, but it also puts you in a great financial standing for the rest of your life if you can afford and buy a home and keep the home. Step 8. We always talk about diversifying, and you got to weigh the risk between the return. And Carl alluded to this already between stocks and bonds and things like that, mutual funds. We've talked about this, but you got to diversify your accounts, right? And you got to look at market performance and understand if you start getting into the investment game, understand what you're getting yourself into. And I'll let Carl take over on this one to explain a little bit about his views on the stock market.
Yeah. So in terms of investing, guys, when it comes to stocks, bonds, mutual funds, other investment types, ETFs, all the different investment types that are out there, a big thing that you want to, I guess, ask yourself is your time horizon, right? how you put money away to work, a big part of it is going to be your time horizon, when you see yourself needing or using this money, right? And your personal risk tolerance as well, right? Somebody who's very adverse to risk may not like investing in the stock market because of the short-term swings that occur sometimes in the stock market. Long-term, you might be fine. You're going to make, your investment's going to go up likely if you have some solid investments in there. But sometimes short-term, as if any of you guys have kept up with the stock market this year, it's been just a wild ride, right? Earlier in the year was a lot of volatility that occurred. And so when you look at your personal time horizon, right, and your goals, right, because that's kind of what it comes down to, right? Your goal, what's the goal, and why are you putting money away? Why are you saving? For what's the objective? This slide here pretty much shows the return on these three type of accounts or investments over a long period of time, right? Right now, they might look a little bit different simply because we're in a stage historically where interest rates are very, very low, right? They're historically low. And so that might be a great thing if you are going to finance a car, or you're going to go buy one, take a loan to buy a car, or if you're going to buy a home that's, affordable, and you take out a loan to buy a home and the interest rate's low. That's great. But for folks that are looking to put money away, into cash, right? And what they mean cash is like a savings account or a money market account, a bank type of account. You're not going to earn much interest, right? 2.3, that's maybe the historical amount that you would have gotten over the last, from 1926 to 2014. But now it's not that, right? It's much lower than that, less than 1%, right? So that's a good place to put your emergency money, right? So your emergency or your rainy day fund, your 6 months worth of expenses, just kind of for a rainy day. It's liquid, available. You can take money out for a rainy day whenever you need to. It's not really designed to grow, right? When you get into bonds and stocks, that's when you get some more growth potential. Just so you guys know, bonds are going to be considered more of a stable, more conservative type of investment where they're maybe not going to grow, right? Bond values don't go up as much as stock values. But they're also not going to dip as much, right? A little bit more stable. And then historically speaking, stocks have returned the highest in terms of an investment return, historically speaking, out of the three that you see here, right? But at the same time, you got to be okay with the level of risk that you're taking on when you invest in anything in the stock market.
Thanks for that, Carl.
Sure.
Appreciate that. Stepping ahead and being young, it's hard to visualize the future, and I know it's tough. Carl, David, and I have all been in your shoes at one point in time or another, and for those of us to get to the point that we're at, it seems like yesterday. It seems like yesterday that I was in college, right? But from everyone who's in our shoes always wants to encourage the next generation to learn from our mistakes, learn from what our experiences, and we're just encouraging you, plan ahead and start thinking about insurance. I know this is something that as college students you don't really think about because your lives are ahead of you. You feel indestructible, but it's important that you think about this because 10 years, 20 years can go by in a flash. And in those 10 to 20 years, I'm telling you, I'm going to guarantee every single person that's listening on this, within a 20-year span, something unexpected will happen to you. It will. It's inevitable. Doesn't have to be the worst thing in the world, but it's still going to be impactful. And it's always important to be prepared. I used to think that I was young and indestructible and nothing bad would ever happen to me until one morning at one phone call at 7 o'clock in the morning, I got a phone call that my wife and my son were in a car accident. And it was the scariest thing that you could possibly imagine and fathom. And they were a split second and half an inch away from it all being over, right? And when I was younger, I thought nothing like that would ever happen to me, right? And that was a bad situation. But what would have made it worse is if I didn't plan ahead with some of the insurances that I purchased. I felt reassured that I had auto insurance because then we could deal with a car being totaled. and being able to get a new one. I was okay with them with the cost of them going to the hospital because we had health insurance. It really lowered the impact of the costs. So I want you all to think about that and start to, when you're making your financial plan, to think about insurance when you're planning ahead. It's really very important. It's just, I can't say it enough how important it is. And just through my experiences, I can just tell you how I was thinking, what I was thinking when I was in my 20s versus where I was at in my 30s to where I'm at now in my 40s, and how my thinking has changed over the years. I'm not just responsible for myself anymore. I'm responsible for others. And you don't want to let them down by not being prepared with proper insurance. You know, we're going to skip ahead. This is estate planning. This is something that if you have any questions, I would, you know, planning out wills and determining exiters and building trusts and stuff like that, you know, wishes for life-saving measures. If that's something you're really completely interested in, I would just, you know, take some time to contact Carl. You know, I know he's not an expert in life-saving measures and stuff like that, but, you know, he's a resource that we can connect you with for people that could build wills and stuff like that.
Yeah.
All right, step 10. I know a lot of information that we've given to you could be overwhelming, especially if you're a first year, second year, third year, if you're about ready to graduate, get into the real world. This could be overwhelming information, but there's always room for you, always room for help. You can always get help. Use a professional. Carl's on this call with you from a financial institution, right? Financial planners, estate planners. You can also learn on your own, the internet, what you're doing today, a seminar, books and magazines. What we're telling you, no matter where you go, whether it's a Bank of America, a Wells Fargo, Chase, a Wescom credit union, there's representatives there to help you, right? I would encourage all of you to go to a credit union in general, because credit unions, how they differ from banks is that they're non-for-profit organizations that have no profit motive in our business with you, okay? So we're not there to make a buck off of you. We're there to help you. We're financial consultants. We're a non-for-profit organization, right? So get help where you can. It's really important that you do so. You're never alone. And it's so much easier today to manage your money because you can do everything in the palm of your hand with a phone. I don't know if you can see it, right? There's apps that are built in, you know, if you have a desktop, you know, online banking, things of that nature. Everything is out in front of you and it's detailed for you through statements and through your spending habits. It's all right there in real time. So there's really no excuse to not be a good financial money manager on an individual basis. Okay. A couple places where you can get help, obviously. If you're not aware of this, I'm making you aware of this now. The UCLA Financial Wellness Program. They're peer coaches on campus to help you out. Well, not on campus right now because of COVID, but you can still make one-on-one consulting appointments over the phone or one-on-one via Zoom or something to that nature, right? So make an appointment today at financialwellness.ucla.edu, or you can email them at financialwellness@saonet.ucla.edu. That's a really good resource that I would encourage all of you to take advantage of. Wescom has temporary hours at our UCLA branch right now, Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. We understand that a number of you aren't local, that aren't, you know, local meaning Westwood UCLA campus. So you can visit our 23 other Southern California branch locations at Wescom, or if you're not in Southern California, find a credit union or find another financial institution that can offer you help. It's always important that you go there, okay? If you decide to join Wescom and become a member of Wescom, I just want you to understand that we're not just in this for the profit motive. I want you to get that. This is our little sales pitch for you to open up an account with us. But believe me, it's worth it because we do business with Bruins and we do good together. If you open up a Wescom checking account with a $100 deposit, $100 of that money will go to these 4 different Southern California community partners that are important to the Bruin community. So $25 will go to the UCLA CPO Food Closet, Students for Students, which is Bruin Shelter, Los Angeles Regional Food Bank, and the Second Harvest Food Bank as well. Right? So that's just something that you know that Wescom isn't just here just to get your account and do business with you. We're here to help Southern Californians with your business. Okay?
All right, I'll be his voice. So if you guys are interested, as Sal was mentioning, we do have our UCLA branch that has limited hours. You can stop in. Right now we have these two offers exclusively for Bruins. There's a Bruin 10% that you can get on your first $1,000. And we also have what we're calling our technology loan that you can borrow up to $3,000 for 0%. So those are just some promos that we have going on right now. Is there any last questions before we wrap up? And I'll mention that I put Sal and Carl's email addresses in the chat if you guys wanted to reach out to them after the session. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer any questions or set up some time to talk with you a little bit further. But I just wanted to give the opportunity to ask any last questions before we wrapped up.
I think I saw a question in the chat box from Brianna, David. I think she was asking about suggesting to buy a home outside of California.
Yes, thanks for catching that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, prices, as you guys know, in just all of California, are definitely much higher. That's obvious than the rest of the country for the most part. But I think you kind of, again, every situation is a little bit different. When you buy property for the intention to rent, right? The goal is to rent it out and have it become a rental property. It's definitely a good long-term investment, in my opinion. Real estate, for the most part, appreciates in value, and you're getting an asset that provides you income on a monthly basis. That sounds great, and it can be great, but just understand what it entails, right? When you become a landlord and you're in charge of that property, you have tenants that you have to that are essentially going to be paying you, or you're going to be depending on them to pay you rent. And then there's maintenance of a property as well. So that's an expense that goes into investing into rental property. And if you go out of state, unless you hire some sort of property management company to oversee that for you, you'd have to kind of keep an eye on it and travel that way. So cost pricing, right, outside of California can definitely be advantageous and less expensive. However, there's pros and cons to doing that. So just, again, you want to weigh those in your personal situation and see if it makes sense, now or for down the road.
Thanks, Carl.
Sure.
So if there aren't any last questions, like I said, the emails are in the chat. Feel free to reach out to Carl or to Sal. And as Sal mentioned, we were going to pick one lucky recipient of a $50 UCLA gift card, and the random chat participant is Brianna. So Brianna, if you can private message me your email address, I'll get in touch with you to let you know how you can get that gift card. But I want to thank Carl for your time and your insight. Thank you, everybody, for giving us the opportunity to share the 10 steps with you. We enjoyed being with you. Hopefully you got some insight, and I'll turn it back over to Derek. Thank you very much.
Oh, just real quick, I just want to say thank you, everyone. I apologize that everything got cut out. David, I trust that you guys answered any questions that needed to be answered. It just makes me feel a little anxious that if there was something that I wanted to cover that didn't get covered, I just want to make sure everyone was clear on debt, okay debt versus bad debt, and getting into the terms and conditions. That was one that I kind of missed out on. And then lastly, just wrapping it up, I just wanted to say thank you for being an attentive audience. David, Carl, I really appreciate you guys being there for me with things cutting out. Derek, thank you for putting this on. Megan, the team over with Alumni Association, thank you for having us. I know, David, did you award the $50 gift card?
We did. We have one lucky winner who's Brianna, and we are going to connect with her to share with her how she's going to get her card.
Thank you so much, everyone. I do appreciate you being an attentive audience with great questions. And Derek, I'll hand it off to you now. Thanks, David, for letting me wrap that up. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so thank you all for coming to the 10 Steps to Financial Success workshop today. I hope you learned something new, and I hope you can better understand financial literacy and how to implement these practices inside of your life. So I hope you all take something for this. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me, anyone in my committee, the rest of the executive board at ASC, or anyone from Wescom, Sal, Carl, or David. But other than that, I hope you all have a great day. And once again, thank you for coming.